Alright, welcome back to the SuperCoach Enough channel. In this video, we're going to look at our tops, chops, traps and slaps for round 4 of the SuperCoach season. So a big week with a lot of players out through injury, a lot going on in the landscape. So a great opportunity to look at our tops, chops, traps and slaps. So how it works is if we've got a trade-in option that's quite good, we give it the tops. If it's a good trade out option, we give it the chop. If it's not such a good trade in, it could be a trap. And if it's someone we're trading out that we shouldn't, we need to give ourselves a slap and wake up to ourselves. So, as usual, we'll go through the position starting at hooker. The top pick this week is Api Coruscant. So, obviously, the Tigers had an absolute field day down at Leichhardt on the weekend. I think in part the Sharks probably made them look quite good, but I think regardless, Appy is definitely one we want to target. He's only going to go up in price. He's got a negative break even despite averaging 90. And I think he's definitely sort of identified himself as the clear number 2 option behind Harry Grant. So it's just a case of how soon do you want to get, your set and forget hookers. I guess the one downside is if he's in such great form, you'd imagine he'd be the front runner for Origin for New South Wales. So I can see why people may want to go Grant and not Appy. But I think, you're not going to get him any cheaper this season. So if you do want him, now is probably the time to get on. On the chopping block, we've gone with Phoenix Crossland. So, still starting in the hooker position and still playing decent minutes, even with Jaden Brayley back. But, there is a regression in his scoring. And I think, that may continue as Brayley builds up fitness. And ultimately, he could end up, with his versatility, ending up being a bit more of a bench option. So, if you've got him, I would highly recommend trading him up to Api Coruscant this week. I think he's at a similar price point to Lussick as well, who is still a viable option. Not as great an option as what he was last week, but I think it's definitely time to move on from Crossland. On the trap list this week, I've got Reed Marnie. It always hurts to say a Bulldog in this position. However, he scored 91 on the weekend. It involved that, try, that long range line break, which led to a try assist. He's not going to do that every week. So I think realistically, he's more of that 50, 55 point scorer, and he will have those spike games. I think for a similar price, you can get Api Coruscant as a much better bet. So probably don't try to overthink it. Go with Appy, and Reed's good for drafts, but that might be about the extent of it. And on the slap list this week is Harry Grant's obviously been on the bye, hurts, but we all know the Storm were having a bye in round 4. So if you did load up on him and Pappenhausen and say Joe Chan, like I have, you got no one to blame but yourself. So you hold Grant. He's the best hooker in the game. Even with Appy's form, you'd still pick Grant over him in a draft format, and that's usually the guide to suggest that you hold on to a Harry Grant. Onto the front row forwards, and so the tops pick this week is Tom Flegler from the Dolphins. So I guess he's moved from the Broncos to establish himself as a leader in the forward pack, and he's definitely shown that in his 2 games so far. So his price is about to go upwards. And I guess you combine that with Big Tino being on the chopping block this week. A lot of people might think, well, Haas is out, Tino's out, maybe Fanua Blake would be the top pick. And I definitely wouldn't begrudge anyone from picking Fanua Blake. I just think that Tom Flegler offers a bit more value. and with a lot of the other players out, there's a lot of positions in flux. I think this could be a good opportunity, particularly if you've had a slow start to the season, to sort of change trajectory and focus some more energy in those other positions. I know I've floated in the preseason, going big in the front row, locking in the two guns, Haas and Big Tino. And I'm kind of glad I didn't, because the way things have panned out, it was obviously not the right strategy. Through no fault of our own, it's just the way it worked out. So I think, yeah, you want to pivot away from loading up in the front row. There's so much value in the other positions that you can, use that money elsewhere. On the trap this week, I've gone with Tom Hazelton from the Sharks. Um, he looks super good in NRL. Every time I see him, he's busting tackles and that sort of thing. He's been elevated to the starting team this week. But I think last week was again an example of he's not going to score a try every week. He's probably not even going to play that many minutes. They've purposely moved Talakai into the second row so they can bring Jack Williams into their middle rotation. Um, it was unfortunate there was three middle forwards all out injured, and Hazleton had to do the work. But I think he'll regress back to that 40, 50 minute sort of role, and probably about that many points as well. So, um, great looking player, and I can see the appeal of wanting to get on him, but I don't know if he's super coach relevant at this point. And on the slack list, I've gone with Sam Hughes. So maybe a few people getting a bit frustrated with him not getting the minutes. But I think realistically, this was always the way it was going to pan out. With the Bulldogs, with those middle forwards that are a bit smaller and can play bigger minutes, I think Sam Hughes was always going to sort of have that role. I think maybe we weren't anticipating Curtis Moran taking that, I guess, fourth forward role that they've, or third forward role. Maybe Mann's playing a bit of hooker. Actually, probably not with Reed Marnie playing 80 minutes. But I guess the gist of it is that Sam Hughes was always going to be a slow burn. I mean, if you don't have Liam Henry, there's probably an argument to switch. But I think if you've got both on your bench, um, there's not really a better option this week. Maybe Willison next week, but you definitely want to give Wilson a second look before you commit to that trade. So we've got Hughes there this week, but he may well be on the chopping block next week. Onto the second row forwards, and the top pick this week is Kai Pearce Paul from the Knights. So it looks like he's now established himself on that left edge, which is what we always anticipated. For a lot of the preseason, I did have him in my starting team as a, slow burn to start. But once he establishes himself, he could be a, sort of a edge keeper type option, or fringe keeper, I think is the word I was looking for. And yeah, he's there now. His price hasn't got away from me yet, so this would be a great time to invest in an 80-minute back rower, um, if you're looking for a trade in the second row. On the chopping block, I've gone with Brendan Piakura. So, yes, one of the many injuries that's cropped up this week. He's got an ankle injury. Reports are 3 to 4 weeks out. And I think, with the likes of Pierce Paul moving up in cash, that sort of thing, um, some cheap centre wing options if you've got the dual position flexibility. I think a player like Piakura is one we probably can't afford to bench, um, for the next few weeks. So we can trade him out. And if he looks good on his return, I think there'll still be value to trade him in. On the trap list this week, probably not a trading target for a lot of people, but more of a public service announcement around Bryce Cartwright. So initially the reports were he's got a fractured rib and will sit out for about 8 weeks, was initially the report. Then he goes and gets named on Team List Tuesday, and it comes out that he has a fractured rib, but he wants to play through it because of Moses being out, and I guess not wanting to let the team down. But it just seems like it's going to be a recipe for disaster. We've had this before where players are supposed to have been out for a while, and they get named, and everyone goes, "Oh, they're okay to have," and then on the team list, they get dropped at the last minute, and then next thing they're not there for a few weeks. So just be mindful if you've got Bryce Cartwright, I'd expect him not to play. He plays the last game of the round, so you really do need an exit strategy if you do have him as well. Um, in the chance that he is a late out, because yeah, something just doesn't feel right, bad juju, all that sort of thing. So I think Bryce Cartwright could be, one of the biggest traps this week. And on the slap list, I've gone with Joe Chan. Um, Missed last week with a finger injury, I think it was, or an infection, maybe an infected finger. So many injuries going on, it's hard to keep track of them all. But he was always going to miss this week. And while there is potentially the risk that he has lost his spot to Sean Bloor, who slotted in, played close to 80 minutes, um, I think, the fact that Sean Bloor has been playing a bit of reserve grade suggests that it was Joe Chan's spot. And, we'll just wait and see next week whether he slots back in. If not, he may be a bit of a dead rookie. But then again, he may also be just one injury away from inserting himself back in. He may end up on the bench, which is obviously then another, discussion about do we chop him. But again, I think we can sit and wait. If you had him in, you knew he was on the bye this week, so there's no need to panic on getting rid of him. Onto the halfbacks, and I guess the top pick this week is a bit left field, but hear me out. I've gone with Drew Hutchison. This isn't the Bulldogs bias. What this is if you're in a situation where you've got Nathan Cleary, you've got Mitchell Moses, all right, you're wanting to trade them out, all right, who do you trade in? If we think about the options, Nico Hines is struggling for a bit of form. He's going to leak some more cash, so probably not does make sense to trade him in. You can see I've got SJ as a trap. He's not kicking goals, um, which obviously limits his upside. So probably not the strongest option. You've got DC, Ben Hunt. All these guys don't kick goals, so we don't usually consider them. Guess the goal kickers, we do have Adam Reynolds, Aiden Caesar, but again, they're the opposite. They kick the goals, but they don't run the ball. They're very much distributors and steering the team around the park kind of guys. So why I'm thinking that Hutchison would be the pick is because of his flexibility. He's also centre wing eligible. So what you could do if you needed to trade out a Moses, for example, you have to park Cleary on the bench. That's fair enough. You could either trade Hutchison in, or if you've got him in your centre wing, like a lot of people do, you could move him to halfback, bring in one of the centre wing options. There's a lot of great centre wing options this week. Not so much great halfback options this week. So, and if you're holding Cleary for that couple of weeks, all right, yeah, you can obviously swap him in. Um, but I guess if you're in a situation like me, so I've got Nico Hines, Nathan Cleary. There's a chance Nathan Cleary doesn't get up next week when Nico Hines is on the bye. So if I was to trade out Cleary to bring in Hutchison, then when Cleary's good to go, which in that case would most likely be after his bye in round 7, by then one of my centre wing cash cows will fattened up. I can trade them out, swing Hutchison back, upgrade Cleary. Or even by then, Hutchison might have made his bit of cash. He'll only be at about 450k estimated. And obviously, you still got to find that money to get all the way up to Cleary. But you're going to have to do that with one of the centre wing cash cows anyway. And if you're trading him out for a Hutchinson, you've got 500k there straight away. So, it stands to reason that there will be some money somewhere to make that happen. Um, but obviously, as you can see, I've got Cleary as the slap. I think there's been some mixed messaging about his length of injury. Um, yeah, I'm going to roll the dice and hope he comes back next week. Otherwise, I might be in a bit of trouble. But even then, I think maybe missing out on a weaker points in the halfback position, if I was going to go, say, a Drew Hutchinson or a Sean Johnson, it may still be better than wasting two trades on getting Cleary out, getting Cleary back in. So yeah, so I guess I've spoken about all these options. So just to recap, I think if you do want to bring in a halfback this week, I'd go with Hutchinson for the dual position. I think if you've got Moses, you chop him. He is confirmed out for about 8 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks, I think was the report. So definitely one you can chop. SJ, there's something going on if he's not kicking goals. So, he that limits his upside. So I wouldn't just jump straight to him as the next best option. Even though he is, he's probably back on a par with your DCs, Hunts, Reynolds, which are probably, that tier below the elite options. And if you've got Cleary, I'd suggest hanging on to him. Just until, you find out next week if he's going to be good or not. And even if you hold till next week and he misses, well, chances are he'll be back after the bye anyway. So um, probably not worth a trade for that 2 week period anyway. Onto the 5/8, and I think the world's most obvious best buy for the week, Lockie Galvin from the Tigers. Bottom dollar, looks amazing. Um, we've got Kyle Flanagan, as a lot of us do, who is going to make some money, but I think Galvin's going to make as much money a lot quicker. They'll get to the same price point, but Flanagan had about 100K or 150K this week head start. So, as much as it seems weird to trade out someone like a Flanagan who's got cash to make, I think Galvin is just too good of a deal to pass up. On the chopping block, I couldn't really see an obvious one until I saw KO Weeks is still in about 10% of teams. I mean, you don't have the excuse anymore of there's no real cheap options. I understand maybe if you faded Flanagan, you didn't rate him, you sort of didn't believe in Ethan Strange. I think with Galvin on the bubble, you've run out of time to sort of make the KO Weeks trade work or pick work. It's not a trade if you started with him. So, you know, take the 80K, use it elsewhere, and Galvin will probably be more expensive than Weeks next week. On the trap list, I've gone with Jaden Campbell. So back from his injury, um, but I guess he's one. I touted preseason that he was going to be a starter in my 5/8 spot, so I do believe in the pick. I just think we can wait a couple of weeks, see if the Titans are going to get any better. You've got Galvin this week, so I wouldn't rush to get him in. Um, there's even, I guess, Isaiah Katoa could be an option next week. So, there's no point going early on Campbell. If he looks good in the first two games, we can definitely look at trying to fit him in. But I think until that time, we can definitely, watch and wait and give Campbell a chance to establish himself back in the NRL level. And on the slap list, I've gone with Dylan Brown. So, if you're like me, you've got Dylan Brown, you've got Cole Flanagan. Cole Flanagan's got a good break evens, making money. Dylan Brown, hasn't set the world on fire early and is losing a bit of value. So the numbers would suggest, well, let's trade out Dylan Brown, get Galvin's cash. We can bring him back in later. But I think with Moses out, it's going to become Dylan Brown's team. I know Gutho will lift a bit around, no Moses in the team. He'll definitely increase his workload. But, this could be the opportunity for Dylan Brown to show why so many of us picked him in the team to start with. So if you're in that situation, trade Flanagan. It seems counterintuitive, but I think it's the combination of points and value. Um, I think we can focus a lot on value at the start of the year, but we still need to also be making those points. And I think Dylan Brown is going to make the most points at 5/8. So if you've got him, just hang on, and he won't lose value because you haven't sold him. Onto the centre wing, and I've got the Hamaso Tabuai Fido as the top centre wing option this week. So with the Dolphins bye last week, he's on the bubble. I think a break even of 0. So as long as he does something positive in the game, he'll make money. and they're playing against the Titans. And we saw what the Dogs did to the Titans last week. So a player with Hammer's attacking capabilities, he could go absolutely nuts. So, he's one I'm definitely targeting for this week myself. And I think if you don't have him and you are looking for a gun centre wing option, he is the first port of call. On the chopping block, I've gone with Tane Tuapiki from the Warriors. So misses this week with a HIA, but from all reports, CNK is going to come back into the team next week. So you're probably not going to get any more cash out of him. He's not that expensive, so you could argue holding in case of another injury. But there is definitely some young centre wing options like Tape, for example. He was probably number two on the list after the Hammer for this week as a trade in option. Bottom dollar rookie. If Tape was playing from round one, we probably wouldn't have even picked Tuapiki in our teams. So I think that trade makes absolute sense. Um, yeah, so I think if you've got Tuapiki, you can comfortably chop him. On the trap list, I've gone with Dom Young. So, it sort of fits the theme of having a boom week, but the underlying sort of base stats, probably don't suggest that he is a keeper type option. So I think, he will make some money and all that, and that's, fine to chase, but you don't want to waste too many trades, constantly flipping through the flavour of the week in the centre wing. And the slap this week, I've gone with Taylor May. So, it looked so good in the first game against Melbourne. Was unlucky not to score more points. And then has sort of dipped off in price while Tungo, has gone to the moon. With Nathan Cleary out, a lot of people might think, the Panthers are cooked for the time being. We'll sideways Taylor May to a better option. But I think, if anything, it could mean that they rely on their left edge a bit more. That's more established with Luai and obviously Taylor May being a part of that. And also, he just has the ability to make things happen. So, if teams start putting all their attention in Tungo, well, there might be some more space for May to work in. So, if you've got him, I'd hold him. I think he's still a great option. He might not be in the top seven centre wings at the end of the year, but at the moment, for his price, he still offers genuine value. So if you're looking to make moves there, I'd find a different way to make that move. I think Taylor May is one you keep. Um, I wish I had him in my team. And on to the fullbacks. So I've gone with Teddy again as the top pick of the week. Absolutely carved it up last week against the Rabbitohs. I don't think, Penrith will be such easy walkovers. Even without Cleary, they're still a very solid defensive unit. And they have a tendency to just plug and play players. So Brad Schneider will come in and do a job. But I think, he is probably, if you are looking to fix up, say, a Reece Walsh type pick, I think he is the best option. So speaking of which, Reece Walsh with his facial injury is on the chopping block. Um, as much as he is a gun, I don't think we can afford to have such a high price fullback on the bench. With Teddy going well, you've got Turbos going well, even Ponga come back into a bit of form. If you got Pappenhausen on the bye this week, again, don't trade players on the bye. You knew they were on the bye when you bought them in. So, yeah, I think Walsh is the obvious one we can cut. On the trap list, I've gone with Jordan Rapana. You know, given that he is also centre wing, it's not the worst option. I can understand why people would look at it, but he has a history of getting himself injured, getting himself suspended by doing something dumb on the field. So, it's a bit of a roller coaster ride with him. He definitely offers a bit of value in terms of his point scoring when he's playing fullback, but it's just one of those ones where if you trade him in, you're probably going to trade him out at some point this season. So I'd just save the two trades and look elsewhere. And Latrell Mitchell is our slap. So obviously South aren't going great. Been a lot of chat in the media, But we all know Latrell loves a big game, and there's not many bigger than a Good Friday game against the Dogs. So, as much as I'd hope for him to have a quiet game in this one, I can definitely see a world where Latrell goes off, the Bunnies get their first win, and everything's a-okay again. So I think if you've got Latrell, you keep the faith. He kicks goals. He's one of the best attacking players in the game, and that's the sort of player that you want for your Supercoach team. So that concludes our tops, chops, traps, and slaps for round four. Obviously, if you've got any questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to add them below this video. If you enjoy this sort of analysis, remember to give the video a like, subscribe for all of the fantasy sports content on the channel, and other than that, we'll catch you in the next one.